Welcome to our deep dive on the psychology of money. You shared some interesting excerpts from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. I'm excited to explore it with you. We're going to uncover why understanding the psychology behind our financial decisions is so crucial. It's not about complicated formulas, it's about the human stories and emotions tied to money.
Exactly right. The psychology of money really dives into those often irrational, always emotional ways we think about money and how that impacts the choices that we make.
And Housel kicks things off with the story about a tech millionaire who made a key component in Wi-Fi routers.
Oh, yeah.
This guy was a genius,
Mm-hmm.
but when it came to handling his wealth, he acted like he was still a teenager. He'd flash cash and brag about his money, often while intoxicated,
Oh, wow.
and just generally behave in a way that just screamed insecurity despite being incredibly successful.
Yeah, this story really highlights a core concept from the book, that your background and experiences really do shape how you view and handle money. This millionaire, despite his success, he was still carrying baggage from his past, which impacted how he dealt with his wealth. It's a good reminder that our relationship with money is deeply personal.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what if he had grown up with a different financial background?
Right.
Maybe he would have been more grounded and secure in his wealth.
Yeah. Housel contrasts how someone who grew up in poverty might view risk and reward compared to someone from a wealthy family.
Yeah.
Someone who has experienced financial hardship might prioritize security above all else.
Yeah.
But someone who has always had financial stability might be much more likely to see risk as this exciting opportunity.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's not just family, right?
Hmm.
Housel talks about how big historical events like periods of super high inflation can impact an entire generation's relationship with money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you lived through a time where prices were just going through the roof, you'd be much more likely to, save like crazy and invest in things that would protect you from inflation. That experience stays with you, and it influences how you think about money for years to come.
So thinking about our own experiences, how do you think our past is shaping our current financial outlook?
Yeah.
Are we being overly cautious because of something that happened years ago? Or maybe we're taking on too much risk without realizing why?
Yeah, it's worth reflecting on that. Are we carrying any financial baggage? Maybe we're unconsciously repeating patterns from our upbringing, whether that's being overly frugal or maybe being overly reckless.
It's like we're on autopilot sometimes when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
But Housel also talks about how luck and risk play a huge role in financial success, even more than we might realize.
Right.
He uses this idea of tails driving everything.
Yeah, that concept emphasizes that sometimes it's the extreme, unpredictable events fueled by either incredible luck or unforeseen risks that truly shape financial outcomes.
Yeah.
And it challenges this idea that success is solely about, hard work and intelligence.
And he uses Bill Gates as a prime example. It's easy to think, oh, he just worked hard and got lucky.
Sure. Of course, intelligence played a part, but Housel breaks down the incredible luck involved. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school-aged people in the world. Statistically, only one of them was going to become Bill Gates. What were the chances that he was the one who attended Lakeside School, a school that coincidentally had a computer terminal at a time when computers were incredibly rare and expensive?
Isn't that survivorship bias, though? We hear about the Gates who succeeded, but not about the countless others who might have had similar opportunities but didn't become billionaires.
That's such a great point. It's so easy to focus on the winners and assume their success was all about skill and hard work, but we miss that massive role that pure chance played.
It makes you question how much control we really have.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever made what you thought was a brilliant financial decision, but in reality, you were just lucky? Or maybe you beat yourself up over an investment that went bad when it was really just factors outside of your control.
I think we all fall into that trap. We tend to overestimate our own skill and underestimate the influence of luck both in our successes and also in our failures.
And to highlight this, Housel tells the contrasting stories of John Bogle, who founded Vanguard and made investing accessible to millions with his low-cost index funds, and then Rajat Gupta, a former Goldman Sachs director who went to prison for insider trading.
Yeah, it's fascinating how two people can achieve a high level of success, but with very different ethical implications. Bogle focused on democratizing investing and helping regular people build wealth. Gupta took this unethical route, which ultimately destroyed his reputation and, landed him in jail.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that even with intelligence and opportunity, the choices we make have a huge impact on our trajectory.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to just learn from success stories. We need to be aware that those stories often leave out this massive role that luck played.
So if luck is such a big factor, does that mean we shouldn't even bother trying to make smart financial decisions?
Not at all. That's where understanding risk management comes in. We can't control luck, but we can control how much risk we're exposed to.
So it's about making calculated risks that we can handle even if things don't go exactly as planned.
Precisely. We need to acknowledge the role of chance while still taking deliberate steps to manage those risks that we can control.
And this leads us to another key concept, the incredible power of compounding. Housel uses Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, to illustrate this.
Yeah, Buffett's immense wealth isn't solely due to his skill. A big part of it is that he's been investing consistently for over 70 years. That's a long time for the magic of compounding to work.
He's been playing the long game. What if Buffett had started investing in his 30s and retired in his 60s like many people do?
Instead of his current net worth, which is estimated at over $84 billion, he'd only have about $11.9 million. That's a whopping 99.9% less, all because he would have missed out on decades of compounding.
That is mind-blowing. It really highlights the importance of time. Even if you're not a stock market whiz like Buffett, the earlier you start investing, even with small amounts, the better.
To further illustrate this, Housel compares Buffett to Jim Simons, a hedge fund manager, with much higher average annual returns than Buffett.
But Buffett still comes out on top in terms of overall wealth because he's been in the game for so much longer, right?
Exactly. Even though Simons had these higher average returns, Buffett's longer investing timeline allowed his wealth to multiply exponentially. It's a testament to the power of patience.
The problem is compounding is so counterintuitive. We want to see results fast, so we often overlook those massive gains that come from slow, steady growth over time.
Yeah, our brains are wired for instant gratification. We struggle to grasp the enormity of long-term growth because it's not immediately tangible or exciting. It's like watching paint dry.
It's like that example Housel gives about the growth of computer hard drives. In the first 40 years, from 1950 to 1990, the capacity of hard drives increased by a measly 296 megabytes. But in the next 30 years, from 1990 to today, we've gained a mind-boggling 100 million megabytes.
Exactly. That shows how slow, gradual growth can suddenly explode into these exponential gains. We often think in a straight line, failing to grasp this accelerating nature of compounded growth.
So how do we apply this to our own lives? Are we being too impatient chasing short-term gains at the expense of building long-term wealth?
It's a good question to ask. Are we constantly looking for the next hot stock tip, or are we focused on building a solid, diversified portfolio that we can hold for decades?
It's about shifting our mindset from quick wins to playing the long game. And that leads us to the importance of savings.
Housel poses this thought-provoking question. Do people actually need to be convinced to save money?
Well, it seems like common sense, right? Saving for a rainy day, planning for the future.
You would think so. But he makes this observation that many people struggle with saving. Some don't think they can save, while others don't believe they need to save.
So it's deeper than just a lack of financial literacy. It's about these ingrained beliefs and attitudes towards money.
Exactly. To highlight this, Housel uses this example of the oil crisis of the 1970s. Back then, the focus wasn't just on finding more oil, it was about becoming more energy efficient.
So instead of obsessing over getting higher returns, we can focus on making the most of what we already have.
Right. Just like being energy efficient gave us more control, focusing on savings gives us more control over our finances. We're not solely relying on these unpredictable market returns.
Housel has this brilliant quote: "Savings is the gap between your ego and your income." It perfectly captures why so many people, even those who earn a good living, have trouble saving. We feel pressure to spend, to upgrade, to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, we're bombarded with messages to spend, spend, spend. It's this constant pressure to maintain a certain image, to showcase our success through stuff that sabotages our saving goals.
It reminds me of your story about wanting to be an investment banker. You were drawn to those high salaries, but quickly realized the demanding lifestyle made you miserable.
It was a classic case of trading time for money. I was making good money, but I had zero control over my life. Every waking moment was dictated by work demands.
That experience really shifted your perspective. You realized that money without control over your time is pretty meaningless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted a career that offered flexibility, even if it meant earning less.
It's a great reminder that real wealth isn't just about a big bank balance, but about having the freedom to live life on your own terms.
And that often requires resisting these societal pressures to overspend and to overwork and to prioritize time over money.
So it's about building a life where money serves us, not the other way around.
Precisely. It's about aligning your financial decisions with what truly matters to you.
Which means there's no one-size-fits-all approach to money. What works for one person might be a disaster for someone else.
Exactly. And that leads us to another important concept, the difference between reasonable and rational in finance.
I have to admit, I always thought those were basically the same thing.
Not necessarily. Rational in finance is often presented as this mathematically optimal choice, the one that maximizes returns on paper. But reasonable takes into account our human limitations, our emotions, and our ability to actually stick with a plan. Sometimes peace of mind is more valuable than squeezing out every last percentage point of return.
I'm starting to see the difference. Like that story Housel tells about Julius Wagner-Jauregg, the doctor who won a Nobel Prize for treating syphilis with induced fevers.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds crazy and even dangerous.
It was controversial, but it worked. Wagner-Jauregg understood that sometimes you need to do something uncomfortable to trigger the body's natural healing mechanisms.
So how does that apply to money?
Sometimes the most reasonable financial decision, even if it's not perfectly rational from a purely mathematical standpoint, leads to better long-term outcomes. Because it factors in your emotional well-being and your ability to stick with a plan even when the market throws curveballs.
This reminds me of Harry Markowitz, who won a Nobel Prize for optimizing investment portfolios, but chose a simple 50-50 stock bond split for his own retirement savings. He knew that a complex, mathematically optimal strategy might be too stressful to manage in real life, and it might lead him to panic and make bad decisions.
That's a great example of how understanding yourself and prioritizing peace of mind can be more effective than blindly chasing this rational choice.
It's about finding that balance between maximizing returns and minimizing stress.
Exactly. It's recognizing that sometimes the reasonable approach is the one that lets you sleep well at night, knowing that you have a plan that you can stick with even when markets get turbulent.
It's a much more holistic way of thinking about money.
Absolutely. It's about looking at the whole picture. The numbers, your emotions, your long-term goals. It's about finding what works for you.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of how our minds work with money, the power of narratives. Housel paints this picture of an alien visiting Earth in 2007 and then again in 2009, noticing no change in the physical world, but this dramatic shift in the economy.
Yeah. It's such a clever way to highlight how our perceptions and beliefs about the economy can have this huge real-world impact. The alien is confused because objectively nothing much has changed, but this sudden loss of confidence completely transformed the economic landscape.
The 2008 financial crisis wasn't triggered by a physical shortage of anything. It was a collapse of trust in the system.
Yeah.
People panicked, pulled their money out, and stopped spending.
It shows how much the economy is driven by psychology.
Right.
Our collective beliefs and expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
And Housel points out how persuasive pessimism can be, especially when it comes to money.
Negative financial events capture everyone's attention because money is something that we all deal with every day. A stock market crash, a recession, a banking crisis. These events impact everyone regardless of their income.
Yeah, when bad news hits, it dominates the headlines and creates this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. It's like we all get caught up in this collective anxiety spiral.
Yeah, but that pessimism often fails to account for human ingenuity and our ability to adapt. Housel uses this example of oil prices.
You mean how the 2008 oil price surge led to all sorts of innovations like fracking, which ended up increasing oil production?
Exactly. Those high prices created this incentive to find new solutions and to unlock these previously inaccessible oil reserves. It's a great example of how market forces can drive positive change.
So even when things look bleak, it's important to remember that humans are problem solvers.
Right.
We adapt, we innovate, and we often find solutions that we couldn't have imagined before.
It's a powerful reminder not to get swept up in these fear-based narratives. Don't extrapolate current trends into the future without accounting for our capacity to adapt and to innovate.
That's a good point. Don't let pessimism cloud your judgment. Approach financial news with a healthy dose of skepticism. The future is always uncertain, and things often turn out better than we expect.
And that's why it's so important to develop your own financial philosophy, one that's grounded in your values, your risk tolerance, and your long-term goals.
Housel emphasizes that there's no one right way to manage your money. It's like doctors who might choose different end-of-life care for themselves than they'd recommend for their patients.
Oh, interesting.
Our financial decisions should reflect our own values and risk tolerance, not someone else's.
Absolutely, your financial plan should be tailored to you. What works for your neighbor might not work for you, and that's perfectly okay.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, it's clear that how we think about money is complex. It's influenced by our past experiences, our emotions, and our unique circumstances.
Yeah, it's not just about numbers and spreadsheets. It's about understanding ourselves, our motivations, our vulnerabilities, and our goals.
And as we move into the next part, we'll explore some more strategies and techniques for actually mastering the mental game of money.
Stay tuned as we dive even deeper into the psychology of money. Welcome back to our deep dive into the psychology of money. Before we move on, I wanted to circle back to something we were talking about earlier, the idea of defining your own financial game.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. It's so easy to fall into that comparison trap, especially with social media, where everyone seems to be flaunting their wealth and success. It can make you feel like you're not doing enough no matter how well you're actually doing.
That's exactly what Housel warns about.
Yeah.
He argues that constantly comparing ourselves to others is one of the biggest obstacles to feeling good about our finances.
It's like that anecdote he shares about Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller at a billionaire's party.
Yeah.
Their host, despite his incredible wealth, probably makes their friend, a struggling writer, feel inadequate. And Vonnegut's response is brilliant. Yeah, but I have something he'll never have. Enough.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a powerful reminder that true wealth isn't about having more than everyone else. It's about having enough for yourself, for the life you want to live.
It's about finding contentment, not constantly chasing after more, more, more. Housel argues that if your expectations always rise along with your income, you'll never feel truly satisfied. There'll always be someone richer, someone with a bigger house or fancier car.
It's like running on a treadmill. You're working hard, but not really getting anywhere. But if you define what enough means to you, you can break free from that cycle of comparison and constant striving.
Exactly what are your core values? What kind of life truly brings you joy and contentment? Once you have a clear sense of what enough looks like for you, you can start making financial decisions that align with those priorities.
It's about building a financial plan that supports the life you want, not the life you think you should be living based on what you see on social media or what society expects.
And that brings us to another important piece of this puzzle, understanding your own risk tolerance. Housel argues that while risk is essential for growth, taking on more risk than you can emotionally handle can be disastrous.
Yeah, he tells that story of Jesse Livermore, a legendary stock trader who made a fortune during the 1929 crash, but eventually lost everything and tragically took his own life. He was a brilliant trader, but his overconfidence and excessive risk-taking ultimately led to his downfall.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale. It reminds us that even the most successful people can get caught up in greed and make reckless decisions.
So it's not just about being smart, it's about knowing yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. How much volatility can you stomach before you start making impulsive decisions? How will you react when your investments inevitably go down? These are things you need to know before you put your money on the line.
It's about finding a balance between the potential for growth and the need for security. As Housel says, you should like risk because it pays off over time. But you should be paranoid of ruinous risk because it prevents you from taking future risks that will pay off over time.
That makes a lot of sense. You need to be comfortable with the level of risk you're taking or it will backfire. It's not about avoiding risk altogether, but about managing it in a way that aligns with your personality and your long-term goals.
And this naturally leads us to another big theme in the book, long-term thinking and the power of patience.
Housel uses that analogy of planting a tree. You can't expect to see a giant oak overnight. It takes years of nurturing patience and allowing the tree to grow at its own pace.
Investing is the same way. Trying to force quick returns or chasing the latest hot stock is like trying to rush the growth of a tree. You're more likely to end up disappointed.
It's about shifting our mindset from short-term speculation to long-term wealth building. We need to get the goalpost to stop moving, as Housel puts it. We hit a certain level of success, and then we immediately raise our expectations. It's a recipe for never feeling satisfied.
It reminds me of that Mick Jagger quote, "I was sick and tired of trying to make everyone happy. I thought I should try and make myself happy."
That's a great analogy. It's about defining success on your own terms and finding contentment rather than constantly seeking external validation.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't just about accumulating more and more. It's about having the freedom to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you.
You know, that really hit home for me when I was reading the book. True wealth isn't about having a fancy car. It's about having the freedom to spend time with your loved ones, pursue your passions, and make choices without being constantly worried about money.
It's about options and control over your time and your future. And that often means making sacrifices today to create a better tomorrow.
And this ties into the importance of saving, which we talked about earlier. Housel doesn't just see saving as putting money aside for a specific goal like retirement. It's about creating a buffer, a safety net that allows you to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs.
He compares savings to a reservoir that you can draw upon when unexpected expenses come up or when opportunities arise that require you to have some financial flexibility.
And having that cushion can provide such a sense of security and peace of mind. You know you can handle a financial setback without panicking or making rash decisions.
You're not constantly living paycheck to paycheck, stressed about every unexpected expense. It's about having options. And Housel has a great way of putting it. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the watches not worn, the clothes foregone, and the first-class upgrade declined.
It's about delaying gratification and making choices that prioritize your long-term well-being over those short-term indulgences.
It's about recognizing that true wealth is often invisible. It's the financial security that allows you to live a life aligned with your values.
And this brings us to another interesting aspect of the psychology of money, the power of narratives. Housel argues that we often make decisions based on the stories we tell ourselves about the world, not necessarily on objective facts.
He uses that example of the dot-com bubble. Investors poured money into tech companies with sky-high valuations. They were driven by this story of a new economy where the old rules didn't apply.
And when the bubble burst, a lot of people lost a lot of money. They got so caught up in the hype and the dream of getting rich quick that they failed to really assess the risks.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how our emotions can override logic, especially when we encounter a story that taps into our deepest desires or fears.
And Housel emphasizes that this doesn't just apply to investing. It affects all aspects of our financial lives. We make decisions about spending, saving, debt, even our careers, based on the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and what the future holds.
Right. It's crucial to be aware of those narratives and to question their validity. Are our decisions based on sound reasoning, or are they driven by these unconscious biases and assumptions?
We need to be honest with ourselves. And this leads to what I think is one of the most important lessons in the psychology of money, the need for humility.
Yeah, Housel is a big believer in recognizing the limits of our knowledge. We need to accept that we don't have all the answers, especially when it comes to something as complex and unpredictable as money.
It's so tempting to think we have it all figured out, that we have some special insight or a foolproof strategy.
But even the most successful investors get things wrong a lot of the time. We need to be comfortable with the fact that uncertainty is part of the game.
It's about embracing a margin of safety, as the legendary investor Benjamin Graham advocated. It's about building in a buffer to protect yourself from unforeseen events.
Exactly. And it's about diversifying your investments, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Even the best laid plans can go astray, so it's important to be prepared. As Housel says, the most important part of every plan is planning on your plan, not going according to plan.
It's about approaching financial planning with a good dose of realism and humility. We can't predict the future with certainty, but we can make informed decisions, manage risk, and be prepared for whatever comes our way.
And it's important to remember that the journey is just as important as the destination. Financial success isn't just about reaching a certain net worth. It's about living a life that is meaningful, fulfilling, and aligns with your values.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's clear that the psychology of money offers some really valuable insights for navigating this often emotional world of money.
Yeah, it's a reminder that our relationship with money is deeply personal, and it's shaped by our experiences, our beliefs, and our aspirations. Understanding those psychological factors at play is just as critical as understanding the technical aspects of finance.
It's about aligning your financial decisions with your values, managing risk in a way that you're comfortable with building those positive financial habits and being open to seeking wise counsel when you need it.
And it's about remembering that true wealth isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about having the freedom to live a life that is full of purpose, meaning, and joy.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some practical strategies and techniques to apply all of these insights to your own financial life. We'll discuss creating a plan that reflects your values, managing risk, effectively overcoming those common mental biases that we all have, and building a more secure and fulfilling financial future.
Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive into the psychology of money.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been unpacking Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money and exploring all the ways our minds can play tricks on us when it comes to finances. Now I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty. What can we actually do about all this? What are some actionable takeaways?
Yeah, it's great to have all this knowledge, but it's even better to actually put it into practice right.
Right.
So let's talk about some specific strategies that you can start using today.
Perfect. One of the things Housel really emphasizes is the importance of building those solid financial habits. Things like automating your savings and investments.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. We're creatures of habit. So
Right.
if you can make saving and investing automatic, it really takes that decision-making out of the equation.
Yeah.
You're less likely to spend money impulsively if it's already earmarked for your future self.
It's like paying yourself first. You don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. And it's not just about automating savings. Housel also talks about the importance of having a clear investment plan, something that you understand and that you can stick with.
He's not a fan of chasing quick returns or jumping on the latest investment trend, right?
Not at all. He advocates for building this diversified portfolio that matches your risk tolerance and your long-term goals. And then the key is to actually stick with your plan, even when the market gets bumpy.
Which can be hard to stay the course when everyone around you seems to be panicking or getting rich quick.
That's why having that solid plan and a long-term perspective is so important. Housel's a big proponent of index funds. He sees them as a simple and effective way to capture the long-term growth of the market without getting caught up in trying to pick individual winners and losers.
He's all about keeping it simple. Don't try to time the market, just stay invested for the long haul.
That's the key. Not timing is what matters most in investing. The longer you stay invested, the more you benefit from the power of compounding.
Which is something we talked about earlier. It's amazing how much difference those extra years of compounding can make.
Yeah, and Housel encourages us to focus on the things that we can control, like our savings rates, the fees we pay on our investments, and our asset allocation. Trying to predict what the market is going to do is just a losing game.
It's about having a plan and sticking with it. It's so easy to get caught up in the daily headlines and the market swings, but as you said earlier, so much of that is just noise.
Exactly. Tune out the noise, focus on the fundamentals, and just keep your eyes on that long-term prize.
Speaking of long-term, House also talks about learning from our mistakes. He says setbacks are inevitable, especially in the world of finance.
He encourages us to view those setbacks not as failures, but as learning experiences. Every mistake is an opportunity to get better, to refine our approach.
It's about having a growth mindset, not beating ourselves up when things don't go as planned.
Exactly. When something goes wrong, just ask yourself, what happened? What could I have done differently? What lessons can I take away from this?
It's about turning those setbacks into those valuable insights that make us better investors and just better decision makers overall.
And finally, Housel reminds us that we don't have to do this alone. It's okay to seek out good financial advice and mentorship.
He's not saying everyone needs a financial advisor, but he recognizes that personal finance can be complicated. It can be helpful to have someone in your corner who understands your goals and can offer some objective advice.
Yeah, he emphasizes finding someone you trust, someone who understands your values and your risk tolerance. It's about building a relationship where you feel comfortable sharing your concerns and asking for guidance.
Someone who can help you stay on track, especially when emotions run high.
That's the key. Finding a good financial advisor is like finding a good therapist. You need to feel comfortable opening up and being honest.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, I think the big takeaway is that mastering the mental game of finance is just as important, if not more important, than understanding all the technical stuff. It's about psychology as much as it is about numbers.
Absolutely. It's about aligning your financial decisions with your values, managing risk in a way that you can live with, building those positive financial habits, and being open to seeking wise counsel when you need it.
And it's about remembering that true wealth isn't just about your net worth. It's about having the freedom to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling and brings you joy. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money. I think we all learned a lot today.
We hope you found it insightful and that you can apply these principles to build a healthier and happier relationship with money.
Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.